Sophia Montgomery, 28, was living a successful life in Chicago as a senior financial advisor. Beneath her sharp, independent exterior, there existed a bond that had never wavered, the deep love she shared with her father, Professor James Montgomery. A quiet and devoted engineering professor, James had always been Sophia's safe harbor in a family where she often felt like an outsider. Growing up in Boise, Idaho, Sophia's life lacked nothing material, yet it was filled with emotional distance. Her mother, Linda Montgomery, was a controlling woman who had long placed her affections squarely on Sophia's older brother, Ethan. A star student and now a partner at a major law firm, Ethan had always been the golden child, the pride of the family. In every family photo, Linda and Ethan stood close, glowing with pride, while Sophia stood just a step away beside her father, quiet and slightly apart. Sophia's milestones were often overshadowed. When she graduated with honors in finance from the University of Michigan, her mother barely acknowledged it. "That's nice, honey. Ethan just won another big case last week." To Linda, Sophia's achievements were never quite enough. But James was different. He had always seen her. He taught her how to change a tire, how to cook the family stew, and would tuck notes in her lunchbox back in middle school, simple affirmations like, "You've got this." When James suffered a mild heart attack last year, Sophia realized that time was no longer something to take for granted. That scare lit a fire in her heart. She knew she wanted to give her father something extraordinary. For 2 years, Sophia saved obsessively. Every bonus, every expense she cut back on funneled into a single dream, a 10-day trip to Bella Vista, a small hilltop town in central Italy where James's grandfather was born before immigrating to the United States. She envisioned her father walking those cobbled streets, touching the olive trees planted by ancestors, and reclaiming a history long forgotten. With every piece of the plan, her heart swelled with emotion. She contacted a local family, the Reiki clan, who still tended to the original Montgomery olive grove. They sent copies of old records and extended a warm invitation. "We would be honored to welcome James back home." Tears had filled Sophia's eyes reading those words. This wasn't just a trip, it was a restoration, a homecoming. In April, she put down a deposit for a centuries-old stone villa nestled in the Bella Vista Hills, enough space for the whole family with panoramic views of the vineyards below. She booked a pasta-making class, a private historical tour of the town's chapel and museum, and traced back generations of Montgomerys through dusty archives. In her mind's eye, she pictured James smiling, holding her hand and saying, "You really made this happen." But what she didn't yet realize was that no matter how deeply her father loved her, the rest of the family wasn't ready to walk that same path with her. Sophia left that family dinner filled with cautious optimism. Her father, James, had smiled like a child on Christmas morning when she revealed the Italy trip. Ethan, her older brother, had given a short but approving nod, and Emily had chimed in with dreamy mentions of Tuscan vineyards. Even Linda, her mother, had seemed unusually cooperative, asking about travel dates and accommodations. For the first time, Sophia thought everyone might actually be on board. But cracks began to show subtle hairline fractures that only became visible when the light hit them just right. Each time Sophia followed up on trip planning, Linda would have an excuse. "Oh, I forgot you were coming today, sweetie. My bridge club's already here," or "We'll talk later. I have a church committee meeting." The dismissals were always wrapped in smiles, polite tones, and graceful gestures. But Sophia sensed the truth beneath the sugar coating. Her mother was distancing herself, deliberately detaching from a plan built entirely on love. Ethan, once polite and prompt, grew increasingly hard to reach. Texts about flight options went unanswered for days. When he did respond, it was with a flat, impersonal, "whatever you think is best." He offered no real input, just silence masquerading as consent. Emily remained pleasant but disengaged. Whenever Sophia mentioned ancestral tours or the cooking class, Emily would smile and say, "Sounds lovely," then quickly change the subject. Sophia began to wonder, was she steamrolling the family? Were they resenting her for taking over James's birthday? But every time she spoke with her father, his joy was undeniable. He practiced Italian phrases, asked questions about the itinerary, and even sent Sophia memes about pasta and vineyards. His excitement was real. 3 months before the birthday, Linda invited Sophia for dinner. When she arrived, she noticed something off immediately. Ethan and Emily were already in the living room talking quietly with Linda. The conversation stopped abruptly as Sophia entered. "Just talking summer plans," Linda said, not quite meeting her eyes. During dinner, every time Italy came up, the topic was quickly redirected. More potatoes. Another work story from Ethan. It felt calculated. Stepping into the hallway to take a work call, Sophia overheard voices from the kitchen. "She's taken over everything," Linda murmured. "Like she's the only one who knows what James wants." "It's always been that way," Ethan replied. Sophia and Dad in their own little world. The words cut deep. Was their bond with James something they had always resented? Sophia drove home in silence, not doubting her plan, but doubting them. The next day, James called, eager to ask about the cooking class Sophia had mentioned. "Think I can learn to make pasta from scratch," he joked. In that single sentence, every ounce of her resolve returned. She knew then this wasn't about proving herself or competing for affection. It was about giving her father something beautiful. But what she didn't yet understand was that not everyone in the family wanted James to receive that beauty unless it came from them. It was a chilly Saturday afternoon in early March, the kind of day that hinted at spring but still carried winter's bite. Sophia drove out to her parents' suburban neighborhood, balancing a box of Italian pastries in her lap, part peace offering, part gentle reminder of the trip she had spent 2 years planning. Her mother Linda had texted a few days earlier, asking her to come by to discuss birthday plans. Sophia, hopeful and eager, thought maybe finally they wanted to be involved. But as soon as she turned onto the street, unease gripped her. Cars lined both sides of the quiet road. She spotted Aunt Lisa's sedan, Uncle Dave's pickup, even cousins she hadn't seen since high school. This wasn't just a planning meeting. This was a gathering. A party. One she had clearly not been invited to. Sophia stepped out of her car pastry box, now slick with sweat in her hands. Her gut twisted with a dreadful suspicion, but still she knocked. Maybe she was wrong. Her cousin opened the door, eyes widening in surprise. "Sophia." "I didn't know you were coming." Not a greeting, just confirmation of what Sophia feared. Inside the house was filled with people. Laughter, soft jazz music, and the clinking of glasses filled the space. A large banner hung on the wall. James Montgomery's 60th birthday bash, June 15th. Sophia stood frozen as relatives chatted in clusters, kids played on the floor, and party planning unfolded all around her. Linda emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of cupcakes. When she saw Sophia, she paused, not with guilt, but with annoyance. "Sophia," she said flatly, "we weren't expecting you." "I can see that," Sophia replied, her voice tight. "What is all this?" "A planning committee," Linda said smoothly. "For your father's birthday." Sophia scanned the room. Nearly every family member was present, even those who barely showed up for Thanksgiving. But she, the daughter who had been preparing the trip of a lifetime, had been excluded. Why wasn't I told? She asked. Linda motioned toward the kitchen. "Let's speak privately." Inside the kitchen was a chaotic mess of menu drafts, sample cakes, and RSVP lists. Sophia looked at the carefully curated evidence of a plan long in motion. "You excluded me," she said. "We assumed you weren't interested," Linda replied, coolly arranging dessert samples. "You have your own ideas." "Italy. This is something simpler." "It's his birthday," Sophia snapped. "The trip was for him." Linda crossed her arms. "We all agreed you're not welcome at your father's birthday party." The words dropped like a stone in a still pond. Conversations in the next room faltered. Heads turned. The silence was palpable, but it wasn't the words that cut deepest. It was the faint, satisfied smirk on Linda's lips, the one she didn't bother hiding anymore. Sophia didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply turned, walked out of the kitchen through the crowd of stunned relatives, and stepped into the cold March air. No one stopped her. No one called her name. And that silence said everything. That night, Sophia's apartment felt colder than ever. She had lived alone for nearly a decade, yet loneliness had never wrapped around her like this. In her hand was a glass of Italian red wine, the bottle she'd saved for the night before their planned departure. Now the rich, warm scent only deepened the ache. She had canceled everything. The villa, the tours, the cooking class. 3 phone calls and 2 years of dreams vanished. Her phone lay face down on the coffee table, silent. No messages, no missed calls. It was as if she no longer existed to her family. She leaned back, eyes closed, trying to suppress the sting of betrayal. She wasn't angry anymore, just searching for answers. Why me? Why this much? At 3:17 a.m., her phone buzzed. A voicemail from Ethan. Sophia hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. She almost deleted it, but something told her to listen. Her brother's voice filled the silence. Not cold and composed as usual, but shaky, strained. "Sophia, it's me. I messed up. We all did. Mom's been lying not just to you, but to Dad. He never knew about the Italy trip. She told him you refused to be part of any birthday celebration. He's been heartbroken thinking you abandoned him. Call me back. He deserves to know the truth." Sophia sat frozen. Her lungs burned. All this time, her father, the man she adored, had been grieving the imagined loss of his daughter's love, while she in turn had believed he chose to stay silent. A lie. A deliberate, cruel lie, and everything had unraveled because of it. She called Ethan immediately. He answered on the first ring. His voice was rough, sleep-deprived, and filled with guilt. "Explain," was all she said. And he did. For the next 45 minutes, Ethan told her everything. Their mother, Linda, had orchestrated it all. She had intercepted Sophia's emails to James' deleted texts, hidden brochures. She spun a web of fiction that Sophia was too busy to care, too selfish to include the family, and only wanted a private trip with their father. To James, she said Sophia didn't want to come home. To relatives, she painted her as arrogant. To Ethan, she posed as the hurt, excluded mother. "I didn't question it," Ethan admitted. "I didn't want to believe she was capable of that. But last night, Dad found one of your brochures in her desk. When he confronted her, her story fell apart. Then he called the bank, found a large withdrawal. She couldn't explain it. "Where is Dad?" Sophia asked quietly. "At Uncle Dave's. He left. Said he couldn't stay in the same house." There was no anger in her voice now, just a deep, hollow sadness. "I think we need to meet," Ethan said. "You, me, and Dad. Tell him everything. Then eventually we confront Mom. Together." For the first time in months, Sophia didn't feel alone. She hadn't forgiven. Not yet. But now at last, the truth had a name. Uncle Dave's lakeside cabin in Wisconsin had once been a summer refuge for the Montgomery family. When Sophia was a child, she'd sit at the end of the old wooden dock, with her legs swinging above the water, listening to her father tell stories about their ancestors from Italy. Now, decades later, that same dock had become a sanctuary for James Montgomery, the man she loved more than anyone, shattered by the truth that had finally come to light. Sophia arrived just as the sun dipped low behind the pine trees. The lake was still its surface like glass. She followed the wooden path to the dock, heart pounding, and found her father seated at the edge, his figure silhouetted by the amber glow of sunset. "Dad," she called softly. James turned. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry beyond tears now, his exhaustion etched deep into every line of his face. He stood slowly and opened his arms. Without hesitation, Sophia stepped into them. They embraced in silence, letting the gentle lapping of water speak what words couldn't. Ethan told me everything he said at last, his voice thick with emotion. About the trip. About what you've been planning. "I just wanted it to be special," she whispered. "Something worthy of you." James held her hand and gestured for her to sit beside him on the familiar bench. They sat in stillness, shoulder to shoulder, watching the lake shift colors with the dying light. "You know," he murmured, eyes fixed on the horizon, "I thought you were angry with me. When I didn't hear from you, when you avoided my birthday, I wondered what I'd done wrong. I thought you knew about the trip," Sophia said, her voice cracking, "and I thought you chose to stay silent. I thought—" "You chose her side." He turned to her then. "You are the most precious thing I have. I would never choose to lose you." Sophia told him everything. About the deleted emails, the intercepted messages, the travel brochures hidden away in her mother's desk. She spoke with clarity, not out of rage anymore, but from a place of clarity and sorrow. James exhaled deeply, a sigh that carried the weight of 40 years of misplaced trust. "I've been married to your mother for 4 decades, he said quietly, "and I'm only now realizing how much I never saw." They remained there as twilight deepened, the sky turning to ash, the water beneath them veiled in navy shadows. After a long pause, Sophia asked the question that had been trembling on her lips. "I'm not asking you to choose or to make any decisions tonight, but do you still want to go to Italy? Just the 2 of us." James looked at her, and for the first time in days, a hint of warmth returned to his eyes. "If you're still willing," he said, "then it would be the greatest gift I've ever received." And in that moment, Sophia knew family could break, trust could bend, but love, the real kind, remained. 3 days after the lake house reunion, Sophia, James, and Ethan returned to the house that once felt like home, but now echoed with untold pain. As Sophia stepped into the living room, a strange sensation washed over her. She had grown up here once, curled up on this couch watching movies with her parents. But now the familiar furniture and framed family portraits felt hollow props in a life that had hidden too much. Linda sat at the head of the table, poised as always, her expression unreadable. When she saw the 3 of them enter together, a flicker of unease crossed her face, but it vanished quickly, replaced by cold composure. "Shall we begin?" James asked, his voice low but resolute. Linda folded her arms. "If this is going to be some kind of trial, get on with it." "It's not a trial," Ethan said. "It's the truth." At first, Linda denied everything. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that she had only been trying to keep the peace to protect everyone's feelings. But as James laid out the evidence, bank statements showing large withdrawals, brochures of the Italy trip, text messages Ethan had recovered, her defenses began to crack. Sophia studied her mother not as a daughter desperate for approval, but as a woman trying to understand another woman's pain. Then Linda finally said what no one expected. "From the day you were born, Sophia, your father never looked at me the same again. I knew he loved you more than he ever loved me." Silence fell like a curtain. The air shifted. It wasn't just an accusation, it was a confession. A bitter root of jealousy that had poisoned them all. "I never took anything from you," Sophia replied, voice trembling. "I was just a child. I only wanted my father's love." James sat still, eyes fixed on Linda. There was no anger left, only sorrow. 39 years together, he said slowly. "And you never told me you felt abandoned." "What would it have changed?" Linda snapped. Would you have loved her less, been less proud, spent fewer Sundays teaching her how to fish or change a tire? Loving our daughter never meant I loved you less, James said. Love isn't something you divide like a pie. And finally, Linda broke. Her mask cracked, and she wept not performative tears, but the raw sobs of someone who had been holding too much for too long. Ethan stepped toward her, voice gentle. Mom, you need help. Real help. What you did went beyond normal family tension. It was calculated, and it hurt all of us. She didn't argue. She just nodded a small, exhausted surrender. The conversation lasted nearly 3 hours. Not everything was resolved, but for the first time in years, truth was spoken aloud. Sophia no longer needed defense, she was heard. Ethan stopped avoiding, he stood accountable. And James, the calm anchor, was finally questioning a marriage he thought was unshakable. Families don't heal in one afternoon. But as Sophia stepped out of that house, she felt lighter, not because she believed her mother would change, but because she no longer needed her to. The burden of proving her worth had been lifted. The truth was finally spoken. And sometimes that's where healing begins. After the tear-filled confrontation, the days that followed passed in a silence that felt necessary. Sophia didn't text, didn't call. Instead, she cleaned her apartment, folded the old travel plans, and tucked them away in a box, her way of saying goodbye to a dream that no longer fit. Strangely, she didn't feel pain when she closed that box. Just relief. As if speaking the truth had severed the cords tying her to everyone else's expectations. A week later, James showed up at her Chicago apartment. No warning, no ceremony, just him standing at the door with 2 cups of coffee and a folded map of Italy. I think he said with a soft smile, "It's time we rewrite this trip. Not for anyone else, just for us." And so Sophia began again. No more sprawling villas meant for extended family. No more tightly packed itineraries. No cooking class for 6. This time, she chose a small stone apartment in the heart of Bella Vista, just 1 bedroom, a balcony overlooking the vineyards, and a modest kitchen where father and daughter could cook together. She rebooked the flights, rented a compact car, and sent confirmation emails to each stop. But this time, every click felt lighter. This was no longer a burden. It was a quiet joy. A journey for just the 2 of them, built on shared history and present love. On the day of departure, James arrived at the airport with an old suitcase and a beginner's Italian phrasebook. This time he said proudly, "I'm ordering my own pasta." Sophia laughed for the first time in weeks. The warmth returned to her chest. Italy welcomed them with golden light and the scent of olives in the wind. Bella Vista was more breathtaking than any photo, quiet, sun-washed, timeless. They wandered down cobbled streets, ducked into tiny bakeries, and spoke to locals in broken Italian softened by smiles. On the 3rd day, they visited Giovanni Ricci, a descendant of the Valsky line. He invited them to lunch beneath a pergola of grapes and laid out dusty notebooks filled with handwritten family trees and sepia-toned photographs. James fell silent when he saw his great-grandfather's name in ink, Antonio Valsky. "This is where he stood," Giovanni said, pointing to the olive grove. From here, he dreamed of America. That night they sat quietly on the balcony. "I used to think family was something fixed," James said. "But maybe it's something we build. Every day." Sophia nodded. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Because in that moment they were no longer the picture of a perfect family. They were something better. They were a real one. 2 months after their return from Italy, Sophia and James came home not with suitcases full of souvenirs, but with something far more valuable, a father-daughter bond restored through honesty, trust, and quiet rediscovery. But perhaps the most meaningful part of their journey was how it sparked a deeper shift within the Montgomery family, a slow, silent reconstruction. Linda began therapy. Not because anyone forced her, but because for the first time in her life she admitted she needed it. The first few sessions she barely spoke. But little by little the armor cracked. Stories emerged of a childhood spent seeking approval of a marriage where she always felt just outside the circle. No one in the family treated it as an excuse. But everyone understood wounds that go unnamed tend to grow toxic. James temporarily moved into his campus apartment, the same place he often stayed during long work weeks. The main house was quieter now, not combative, but not yet peaceful either. Linda wrote a letter to Sophia not asking for forgiveness, only saying she would love to hear about the trip when Sophia was ready. Sophia didn't respond immediately, but one crisp autumn evening she invited just 5 people, her family, to a small Italian restaurant in Chicago. No formal invitations, no grand celebration. Just a quiet meal offered without performance. Emily and Ethan arrived first carrying a basket of fresh bread and a bottle of wine they'd found from Bella Vista. Linda came last, dressed simply, wearing no makeup. Her eyes met Sophia's for a fleeting second, not distant, not pleading, just open. James broke the silence first. "We've had plenty of dinners that looked like a family. Tonight I just want us to eat like one." That evening no one brought up old wounds. But no one pretended they hadn't happened either. They talked about the trip, about the vineyard in Italy, about the sunsets over Bella Vista. Linda listened, nodded, and when Sophia described the moment she found her great-grandfather's name in the family ledger, Linda whispered, "Thank you for bringing him home." Sophia didn't respond aloud, but inside something loosened. Not full forgiveness, but the beginning of it. From then on, the Montgomerys didn't try to go back. Instead, they chose to rebuild on a new foundation: truth and respect. James and Linda continued couples counseling. Ethan and Sophia met for weekly coffee, no longer defined by roles or rivalry. Emily Long, the quiet one, became a bridge, not a buffer, but a participant. 1 year later, on James's 61st birthday, the family gathered again, this time at a small trattoria run by a chef from Bella Vista who had relocated to Chicago. When James raised his glass and said, "Family isn't what we're given. It's what we build day by day," everyone at the table understood. They had survived the earthquake, and what remained was a family. Imperfect, but real.